All right, so let's get started.
Okay, the first thing we were going to discuss that we put off for a little while was left versus right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we look at, when we look at the most basic levels in our universe, you notice that even, basic molecules are divided into their levo and their dextro isomers, right? So there's a left and a right for the universe, right? That's in and of itself, that's incredible. And so we see this at the deepest structures of physical reality and biology, this left-right distinction. And physicists probably have more to say about that, but they've got their own problems at the moment. And anyway, so now in the brain, we're just going to speak about the overall biological truth. In biology, you can never say anything 100% because everything, just look around, you can see it's a completely a gradation. But so the left side of the brain is, in right-handed people, the dominant side of the brain. And the thing that makes it most dominant is the verbal cortex, which I won't go into detail, Wernicke's area and things like that. And so all left side of the brain on the right-handed person. Also, they're what we consider intelligence and what we probably measure as intelligence mostly is on that side. Now, the right side of the brain, biologically speaking, is the not dominant hemisphere, and it is the hemisphere that's responsible for synthesizing and putting things together. And it's also the more creative and more loose and able to go with the flow, I would say. And these are all very, very crude terms because, frankly, our science is limited. And the whole idea of we could divide human consciousness or experience into these, this dichotomy. But reality, we can't. Of course, we can't do that. There's no left and right in reality that I know of. And so, but in terms of metaphor and also with some neurobiological underpinning, typically the left hemisphere would be the analytic, the verbal, the overt content, the by the letter and by the rule, in the books. And the right would be the free-flowing, free-form, creative, less austere, less rigid, more creative, and more able to grab the overall gestalt of the situation. And so these are the current scientific metaphors that are floating around. In other cultures and other traditions, these same distinctions arise, right? It's like the passive and the active, the receptive and the opposite of receptive, the creative, except we were using creative word that way there. And then we have whenever you have this, these play of these two poles, you get the more comprehensive capacity of coming at something in two ways as opposed to one. And so the human brain seems to be oriented that way. And in the Dharma, in the case of, I think it was Don Gennaro, as described in Castaneda's books, he did divide them into right and left, and so did Robert Ornstein, a very, very influential and Sufi acolyte who did a book called. Have I introduced you to Evolution of Consciousness or Introduction to the?
I just finished reading it the other day. Evolution.
Okay. Well, doesn't he?
Say it again.
Does he not go into all of that or not? The left-right brain. That's one of his big sticks.
Yes. Yeah. He discusses that.
Okay. Well, I hope I didn't violate his research or whatever, his findings too much. But that's the overall general picture. In terms of reality, folks will discover there is no left or right. There is no up or down or tall or short or any of that stuff. So these things don't apply, but it's a useful way of speaking for folks. And if you take your right hand, are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Hey, top. Okay. So now, are your hands free?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you just feel into your left hand.
With my right, or you mean feel it? Just sense it.
Just feel your left hand as much as possible.
Yep.
Now clench it into a fist and open it a few times.
Okay.
All right. Now do the same thing on the right.
Okay.
You notice the difference? That's interesting. I sure do. But maybe it's idiosyncratic. Anyway, just play around with it and see. Can you discern right and left first in your body? And then see if you could just discern right and left in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are approximations, but sometimes they can be useful, and sometimes you might want to say, I've had enough left brain thinking for today. I want to relax and watch an educational movie or something. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
But taking it beyond that, I think, is a mistake. I mean, you could explore it, but I think beyond that, I don't know yet. I mean, we just don't know enough yet to say. I mean, we can say a lot, like the fact that the auditory hemisphere is on the left means that if there's a stroke on the left, you will lose your speech. If you get a stroke on the right, you'll preserve your speech. So things like that. And in Dharma, we always have to be using the in-breath, the out-breath, the comprehensive view and the particular view, the one and the many and the one. And so this is something we do all the time in contemplation, right? Just look at things from many perspectives. And using different faculties of the brain. Which book of Ornstein's did you read, by the way?
Of which book of what did I read?
Ornstein.
Robert Ornstein. Sorry, I didn't hear the word. Evolution of Consciousness.
Okay. Yeah, so I think his fourth book or something like that is on the hemispheric dominance. Mm-hmm. But again, it's not the highest yield path there is for non-scientists. So that would be what I'd have.
So if I notice, say it again.
Any more questions? I mean, yeah, say more. Ask more, please.
So if I notice a parallel between Clearys Notes and the Tao Te Ching, where left is transmundane and right is considered mundane, and then Castaneda says left is...
That's very interesting. Could you read that note to me?
Oh yeah, let me go get it. Okay, here's a note. Do you want the actual passage as well?
Yeah, why not? They tend to be beautiful.
Okay. This is 34 from Clearys' translation. The great way is universal. It can apply to the left or the right. All beings depend on it for life, and it does not refuse. So that goes on, but his note, this means that the way can be used to attain both spiritual and mundane aims.
Right, correct. So so the question is
so left and right he likens to spiritual and mundane respectively. I said transmundane, I guess I misquoted.
Okay, so spiritual would be the right side of the brain or the left side?
Well, I don't know if this is about the brain. So he says, I guess it could be
They line up. How they line up. Let's just find out.
Yeah, so left would be spiritual and right is mundane.
Yeah, so that would be left hand and right hand, which would be right brain and left brain. if you looked at it that way. So you could say left and right if you're looking at hands. You'd say right and left if you're looking at the brain.
Right.
So you how they it's a very now in the Castaneda.
That's what I was. Yeah.
In the shamanic tradition, it has a totally different role.
Okay. Because I was thinking of the parallel. If he says left is spiritual, right is mundane, depending on if you're looking at the hands as opposed to the hemispheres,
right?
It would line up with Castaneda's left is nagual, right is tonal.
Yeah, you can do that too if you want.
So
right? But again, and not in the Tao Te Ching, but in Castaneda, those are pretty much just metaphors.
Okay. My next
question.
If
you want to, they didn't know about it back then. I don't think. Maybe they did by some other means, but it's not a central issue. You just want to use your right brain for looking at things comprehensively and for doing doing creative work, synthetic work, and kind of poets and painters probably use their right hemispheres for the creative part, and you use your left hemisphere for the verbal parts, and for the also you use the right hemisphere for your mathematics and your spatial work. And so we normally use both sides of our brain all the time, right? We have the corpus callosum that connects the two sides, the big thick band of fibers like a telephone cable. And so intuitively, I mean, or just inherently, we use both sides all the time, and it's just a way of speaking.
Mm-hmm. My next question.
Now, another thing. I mean, this is a big deal because left and right go back a long time. So sinister. So one of the things I remember when one of the things that came to mind was that left is associated with sinister. Correct.
Cleary also has a note on that too. Yeah.
Oh, really? What did she say?
Well, generally, I acknowledge that left is associated with sinister, especially like religious communities and left has been a long time associated with sinister. He also has, this one's from 31, Fine Weapons. Lines 15 through 16 are: the left is favored for auspicious things, the right for things of ill omen. And he says, it is interesting to note that this pattern of association is opposite to the globally more common tendency to regard the right as auspicious and the left as sinister. So much for universal archetypes. Even in later Taoist tradition, the expression left-hand path is derogatory.
Right. So good. So we can see how these are just arbitrary metaphors. Right. Number one. And number two, we can see how culturally we'll associate good with one and bad with the other, just like we divide everything else up in our dichotomy loving minds. And but it's just a matter of speaking for the most part. Although there are real neurobiological differences, and it's a useful way to think about your own thinking and learning, right? So sometimes you learn for the left brain, sometimes you learn for the right brain. What was it he did in Costa? They went nuts trying to help old Carlos, open up, and they whispering things in his ear into one ear and then talking into the other or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carlos is a real hysterical kind of guy, and that makes for a great reading experience. But not such a great experience, unfortunately. So, and remember that Carlos himself never quite woke up. We got very close, but never quite woke up.
Okay, I haven't finished it, so he didn't ever wake up.
Well, no, well, wait a minute. How many books do you read? I would not read the last 3. I mean, it also gets worse than that. Then he needed money, I guess, or whatever. I don't know what happened. But
the last...
Go ahead.
I've read up to the last... I have 1.5 left. I took a break. So
wait a minute. Which books are we talking about now?
Okay, Eagle's Gift and Power of Silence are the last 2 in the series, and I stopped halfway through Eagle's Gift.
Okay, that's fine. Just remember, as you get towards the end, you get into some real misleading stuff and stuff he probably shouldn't have published.